There is a great controversy in Lewis Carroll circles about the rejected 1865 printing and the approved 1866 printing of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Some claim that the first printing wasn't all that bad, and others claim it's even better than the first. Today, I would like to begin by going through a brief history of the issue. Then we will put an end to this controversy. We will solve it. We will do that in 2 steps. First, we will discuss a couple of concepts about Victorian printing, which seem to have been forgotten, one technical and one artistic. Second, we will solve this issue with, well, in a word, observation. Welcome to Stuffing the Teapot, or Talking All Things Lewis Carroll. My name is Matthew Demakos. I am a member of the Lewis Carroll Society of North America, and for the last 20 or so years, I have been studying and writing about Lewis Carroll. For the last 3 or 4 years, I have been concentrating on John Tenniel, the artist who illustrated Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. The 2 first editions. Carroll published Alice's Adventures first in 1865 in Oxford at the Clarendon Press, but he immediately heard from John Tenniel, the artist. Carroll wrote in his diary, "Tenniel is entirely dissatisfied with the printing of the pictures, and I suppose we shall have to do it all again." He saw Macmillan, and they decided to print it with clay in London. And the second edition, as you can see, has 1866 on the title page, though it was actually printed in 1865, and the first printing is 1865 on the title page. One of the first to comment on the 2 editions is Sidney Herbert Williams. He wrote, and this was in 1924, "As for the defects in the 1865 edition, I must say that I have been at a loss to find them." So he doesn't even see the problem with the first printing. In many instances, the woodcuts are sharper and more defined than those in the next edition. So he's even saying that the second edition is worse than the first, right? Portions of the edges of the woodcuts and Tenniel's monogram are not reproduced. Well, remember that. Portions of the edges. And there's other commentators, even before Williams. Sargent writes, "The woodcuts, however, appear to be identical, though the 1866 impressions are lighter and less inked." So he's saying that the redo, is worse than the first. Roger Lansing Green, 1962. "Tenniel must have been hypersensitive." Okay, we have to blame, a personality trait on this problem with these 2 editions. Although Dodson was perversely fastidious, yes, we have to bring out another personality trait, this one on Dodson. Carroll, right? Carroll's real name was Charles Dodson. So we can't allow the books to speak for themselves. We have to blame these 2 men, their personalities. Rodney Enkin, "Tenniel so critical, repressed anger." Tenniel was so upset with working with Carroll on the book that he decided to be, critical. Didn't expect Carroll to actually cancel the edition. Didn't really mean what he was saying. This is what Enkin writes, Could Tenniel have been sent one of the flawed copies? This is from Wakelin and Cohen. What are we to do with all this, right? That's the brief history. We're done. Concept 1, the overlay. Now, here's a simple diagram of printing. We have the electro here, which is just a plate that represents the illustration. The brown lines are what will print, right? They're raised. And the darker areas will not print. They're the white. An electro is just like the print, a page of print. And that goes here. And then the paper is here, And the electrode is, of course, inked, and the paper comes down, the press presses on it, and the backside, the bottom side of this paper gets inked. This is a very simple diagram of how printing works. But printers have a problem. They have the problem they have to deal with. And it's best explained in an analogy. If we have a bridge, we have these 14 supports here, cars running over the bridge. These supports take on the same amount of weight, each one of them, about. Well, let's say we move these down here. Well, there's the same number of supports, but they're not taking on the same amount of weight anymore. This one's going to wobble. He's going to take on more weight. And this one in here has friends helping out nearby. He's going to have less weight. In another analogy, I could say here, we have a bed of nails here, let's say. There's 594 nails here. Okay. Well, we can lay on that bed of nails. No problem, really. It takes about 3 nails to hold up 1 pound without hurting human skin. So there's no problem for a man less than 200 pounds to lay on this bed of nails. It's just science. Well, I could add 8 nails. The more nails we add, the better, right? So let's add 8 nails. There, I added 8 nails. We can lay on this bed. Well, not really, no. We have all these nails concentrating. Then there's only 1 nail in the shoulder up here, and 1 nail under the shoulder blade here. Ow! You're not going to lay on this bed of nails, I hope. It's going to hurt. And that's what happens here. We have this line here, okay? It's surrounded by other lines. It represents one of these nails, or one of these supports here. It has friends helping out nearby. We have this line up here, however. Nothing's helping out nearby. It's going to receive more pressure, has more work to do. It's this support here. It's this nail here on the shoulder blade. Okay? When a flat printing plate comes down on this surface, there's a problem. These areas right here, dense areas, are going to be not receive enough weight. And this is going to receive too much weight. This is going to bleed like this bled. So the printers have to solve this problem. How do they do it? With the overlay. The blacker areas are these peaks. The overlay is basically a contour map of the illustration. They make about 5 copies of the illustration, bad prints, and they cut them up until they have the darker areas as the peaks and the lighter areas as the valleys. Okay? Now, the bottom sheet of the overlay will even be a board that they actually peel away. Many printing books tell you they peel away the paper actually to get this valley here. Then they use this to print. They put it right here. I'm not sure if I have this upside down or not, but they put it in here. So the light areas are here, and the dark areas are the taller one. So when this is all squeezed together, this is going to receive more pressure right here. This would be a dark area receiving more pressure. This would be a light area. Okay? And that's how they solve this main problem of printing, of getting an even impression, as they call it. This bumpy surface that is actually coming down is actually producing what they call an even impression. Concept 2, softly, not suddenly vanishing away. What you're looking at here are proofs. They're not from the printer. These are done by the engraver, the proof taker. Engraving manuals will tell you how to make proofs. What they wanted to do was they didn't want these areas to suddenly stop. this background detail here. You can notice it tapers away. The ink is partially wiped from the block. Well, they would ink the whole block, the wood block, not the electro. And then they would wipe ink away from an area like this, or like this here, or down here, this one. But they would wipe the ink away, and then they would burnish it. Well, they would have a piece of paper over the block, and they would rub it with a burnisher back and forth, and this would get this sort of effect here. Okay. Of course, they wouldn't lighten this area. That's an important area. But these background areas, they would lighten this way. All engraving manuals about proofing will discuss this. Now, the printer was told to do the same thing. Printing manuals, when making the overlay, they discuss how to get this effect that the engraver did with proofing. Keep the edges light and clear. Lighten the impression. If not treated, they are likely to come off too hard. So they didn't want these to come off too hard. So the engraver and the printer have the same goal. It's an artistic one. To make these lines not sudden and sharp. Now, let's look at Clarendon versus Clay. Since we know those two issues, let's take a look. And we can just look at the darks, because the printer can handle the darks different than the light. In one illustration, he can print the one area darker and one area lighter due to the overlay. Well, let's just take a look at the darks. 1865, the first printing, and 1866, the second printing, right? Look at these darks from the 65. Not so good. They didn't receive enough pressure. Here, just fine. Here, not so good. Here, pretty good, right? This looks very sharp. Here is Alice tipping over the jury box. Look at this. What is that? Well, I'll tell you what it is. You have to look at the 1866 to know what it is. Tenniel did simple cross-hatching. Then on top of it, he did rough cross-hatching. We can see almost a 3D effect. We can see what the engraver cut. Here, we don't see anything. I mean, we don't know what the engraver, because he didn't engrave all those splotches. This is horrible. This is the rabbit scurrying away, right? And Alice is sitting in her pool of tears. Look at that from the 1865. Is this good? Well, no. This is good. We can see what the engraver cut, what Tenniel drew. Not this. He didn't draw that. That's bad printing. Consistently splotchy blacks. Well, in the Clarendon, there's 33 to 39 of the illustrations have consistent splotchy blacks in them. Clay, none. None. The numbers here are based on 3 copies of the 65 and 3 copies of the 66. I didn't want to have confirmation bias, so I made an Excel spreadsheet and I took pictures of all of the illustrations, 252 of the illustrations, and I analyzed them, keeping notes of what I see. I went through it twice, and these are the numbers I'm reporting. And I've also looked at other copies of my book, of pictures I have taken for other reasons, and anecdotally, I will say they also match my findings. Let's look at the first 5 illustrations to keep me honest, right? I'll just show you what the first 5 show. You can see Clarendon. Not so good here compared to what Clay's doing. This is the rabbit looking at his watch. Look at this shading compared to this. Look at this. The shadow on Alice's leg here. And this is nice. This is a splotch. Look at her shoe. And look at this shoe. Her dress. Her dress again. The next illustration. We can see nice. We can see this is all splotchy. And you know what? I'm going to show you 5 more. Again, the shoe. Look, that's what it should look like. Look at this beautiful black cross-hatching. Look at this splotch. Now this isn't so bad, right? Well, it's a little off, but not so bad. And this one again, not so bad. You can look up here, you can see that this is a good black and this is not, and especially here and here. Ah, well, here we have this. This is horrid, isn't it? Look at that. It's horrible. Look at this. This is great. Wonderful. Ugh, look at this beak. Hard. And then we have a nice beak here. Those are the first 10. I could go on. Now we can look at the lights. We looked at the blacks. Let's look at the lights. Well, what do we see here? On the surface, all alone, this doesn't look so bad. But take a look at Clay's. Well, this is an elegant flamingo neck. It's too thick. Clay knows he has to take off. And he does. This is that one support at the end of the bridge. This is that nail on your shoulder. That lone nail on your shoulder. He has to take off weight here. He knows it. This, he didn't take off weight. It's taking off, he's taking on too much pressure. You even see a little weakness here. And a little more strength here. Clay was concerned with Alice's hair, obviously. He seems to have taken pressure off Alice's hair. She's a blonde, obviously. And here, well, oily blonde. Here, compared to here. Okay. Even Clay adds more dimension. When you handle the overlay properly, you want the backgrounds to fade, to be lighter a little bit, so they appear in the back. The lighter the background appears, the lighter you print the background compared to the foreground, the more dimension you're going to get. And you can see that here. The trees sort of impede on the youth here. Here they retreat back a little further in the clay. These traps appear kind of closer to Father William than these traps back here. So you get more dimension if you handle the overlay correctly. Let's take a look at this illustration. You can see the hardness of these lines in the clay. In the Clarendon. This is what the manuals say you shouldn't have. And you can see that Clay is doing something. He's doing what the manuals say. He's tapering these off. He's also treating the hair. But neither of these can compete with the proof taker's proof. This is actually a proof from the wood block. And we can see that this is better than Clay's. And we can see, look at the hair. The hair is much better than even both of these. Clay's is better than Clarendon's, for sure. But you can see what the proofer can do. And the printers knew they could not do what the proof taker could do. Okay? And you see this written in all the manuals. Carroll himself even commented on this. The proofs have a delicacy of detail to which there is no approach in the printed book, wrote Carroll to Macmillan. You can see that here. Well, Clay's imperfection. You see, Clay wasn't actually perfect. And this is where those commentators come in. Okay? Look at Clay here. You can see he doesn't get everything. This is too light. But though this is too light, this is dark enough. Though Clarendon gets this. This is dark. This is actually too light. You can see that he's just barely getting enough black here. But Clay's doing better. This is the power of the overlay you're seeing here. Same here. You can see that Clarendon gets all this tree. This is the cat disappearing in the tree. But you can see, well, Clay kind of fails here. But his black is blacker than his black over here. Okay? So you can see the power of the overlay. Remember what our two commentators said, our two earliest ones. The 1866 impressions are lighter and less inked. He writes Sargent as if he sees this as less inked, and he just assumes the whole thing is less inked. Okay? He sees this as less inked, and he believes the whole is less inked. He doesn't know about the overlay. He makes an assumption that isn't true. Williams writes, portions of the edges of the woodcuts are not reproduced. He's right. It's true. It did happen in the clay. Let me show you more of these problems with clay. You can see this area here is fine. This clay is, taking a little too much pressure off here. The man who made the overlay seemed to have gone too deep. This is a good case. Look, this is too hard. You see a printer not doing his job. Okay? And this is too light. This is exactly what happens when you don't use an overlay. This is why you use an overlay. This is a good study of why to use an overlay. We have too dark and we have too light. Clay, we see that he's doing it, though he's failing maybe. Look, you see this. He took off too much pressure. And maybe the overlay misaligned here or something. He's trying to take off pressure at least. But he does get this dark. Our two observers, Williams and Sargent, I don't think they notice this. How could it be that this is too light, but this is too dark? Or dark enough compared to the Clarendon. Here, Clay doesn't quite get what Clarendon gets in this detail, right? He's trying to do his job, but he perhaps overdoes it. Even Alice's hair, Clay sometimes goes a little too light handling it. And especially in this case, I think there's three of these I could point out. This is too light. He fails here. He's lightening to a fault in many of these. But these rotten edges is a difficult issue to solve, because it doesn't just appear in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in the first or the second printing, in the clay. It appears all over. Puck on Pegasus. You can see it here. Lalla Rookh by Tenniel, a celebrated printed copy. You see it all over. Here and here. You see these rotten lines. Aesop's Fable, again Tenniel. You see it. Okay. Printed by Clay, I believe. And there's countless books on Arctic exploration I won't show you that also have a lot of this rotting. And here's some other book, and you see it up here. You see it here. Here, I don't even know who's doing it, right? Did the engraver, cut it this way? Did the artist draw it this way? Or both the engraver and the artist know how the printer would handle it and want this effect exactly as shown here? It's hard to tell sometimes. And here we see it in the Memoirs of an Umbrella. Even on a Trader Joe's shopping bag. There it is. Okay? It's all over. It's hard to come up with how much is acceptable when it comes to printing. But we still have to make a conclusion, right? So I'm going to conclude this way. Lightened to a fault. Clarendon, he does it about 3 times. He's not totally innocent of it. Clay lightens to a fault 7 to 13 times. Okay? And I'm just assuming it's all bad. For the sake of argument, let's just assume it's all bad. Okay? But you have to remember, lightning to a fault, these are problems with very insignificant details. Okay? Just shading in the back. For Alice's hair, that is a problem, I admit. But mostly, these are on inconsequential items on the edges of the drawing. Splotchy blacks, however, was a different story. Clarendon, 33 to 39 of the illustrations. There's only 42 illustrations in the book. 33 to 39 have splotchy blacks. Consistent, I'm just not finding one in those 3 copies. I'm finding it in all 3, 33 to 39 times, depending how critical you want to be. That's why I'm giving a range. But they condemn the book. Okay, they condemn the book. These splotchy blacks appear on, the dodo's beak, Alice's shoes, the drink me bottle, Alice's dress, on more important details. You may say they appear a lot on the cross-hatching, and the cross-hatching is only a background. But cross-hatching, that's Tenniel's bread and butter. That's what he's the king of cross-hatching, right? And you want to see nice, clean, sharp cross-hatching. We're imitating pen and ink drawings here, not splotchy drawings. So it's important. Clay, splotchy blacks, none. None. On this alone, the Clarendon is condemned. I'm not even bringing up the other problems with the printing, whether it's dirty ink or the impression coming up from the backside of the page, which you can see on clay sometimes as well, by the way. But just on these issues, the Clarendon is unacceptable. And remember, Lewis Carroll, he was involved here. After the printing of the second printing, he wrote very far superior to the old, and in fact a perfect piece of artistic printing. He heard from Tenniel, and he wrote, heard from Tenniel, approving the new impression. Even Tenniel, both these men were very picky men. Even Tenniel was a picky man. And 30 years down the line, Carroll still believes that the Clay's first printing was a superior to the old, right? He's working on a new version of the books. He writes to Frederick Macmillan, the new copies ought to be fully equal from an artistic point of view to the original issue. Alexander Macmillan was involved with the Clarendon and the Clay. He was nobody's fool. He was in publishing for 20 years now. He knew all about overlays. When Carroll came into his office to discuss this issue, once he heard Tenniel's name, he probably knew he had an overlay problem. And he looked into it, and he would have known that they didn't do an overlay. He would have seen it, or they were lax in overlays. Carroll asked him about the sheet. The book wasn't actually fully bound by this time. There are many pages just in sheets. So Macmillan looked to see if those sheets were workable. But he knew. Okay, he looked into it. As we look at the last 5 illustrations, comparing Clarendon with Clay, let me just say one last thing. Jack the Ripper fans, Ripperologists, they cannot go back in time and investigate the crimes. In their case, the evidence washed away a long time ago. But in our case, we can go to the libraries, we can call up the books, and we can observe. In our case, the blood is still splattered on the wall.